Hello, folks. Thanks for joining us on Head Inside Mental Health, featuring conversations about mental health and substance use treatment with experts, advocates, and professionals from across the country sharing their thoughts and insights on the world of behavioral health care. Broadcasting on WPVM 1037, the voice of Asheville, independent, commercial-free radio. I'm Todd Weatherly, your host, therapeutic consultant, behavioral health expert. It is my privilege and pleasure to welcome Dr. Amanda Fialk to the show today. Dr. Fialk is partner and chief clinical officer at The Dorm, a young adult treatment community with locations in New York City and Washington, D.C. Amanda received her master's degree and doctoral degree in social work from the Wurzweiler School of Social Work, where her dissertation focused on the clinical implications of countertransference in the treatment of addiction. She completed psychoanalytic training at the Institute for Contemporary Psychotherapy in New York City. Prior to joining The Dorm in 2011, Amanda was the program director for the New York Center for Living and Flatbush Addiction Treatment Center. Amanda has specialized training in DBT, CBT, addiction and co-occurring disorders, eating disorders, family therapy, EMDR, and motivational interviewing. She is a member of the National Association of Social Workers and the New York Academy of Medicine and an adjunct professor at the Wurzweiler School of Social Work. Amanda believes that clients and their families need to be treated holistically and from a strengths-based perspective, and she has seen firsthand the healing power of therapeutic alliance. On the fun side, Amanda is a competitive figure skater growing up and a U.S. Figure Skating Association gold medalist. Wow, that's cool. She loves sports, but she is a huge New York Ranger hockey fan and an avid CrossFitter. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I've known you guys for quite some time now. The Dorm, how long's the Dorm been around?
Oh, about 17 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys have got a good run going. And I've seen you speak at conferences before. I think we met, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 years ago. And I've had a couple of clients there at the Dorm getting your services there in DC. But you guys are in the Dorm in and of the name, of course, speaks to young adults and young adults that are looking at their futures, probably college involved on some level, and getting those things. But the thing that I really like about just kind of the way that you present the program, and I'm sure this speaks to your expertise and training, which is it is a treatment community, which is
Yeah.
a different way than most places talk about their program.
Mhm.
So tell me a little bit about why you refer to it as a treatment community specifically.
Yeah, when I talk about the dorm and I sort of describe the model of the dorm, a core pillar of the model is community. It is really hard to be a young adult, like period, full stop, right there.
Right.
Uh,
Just
it
right. Yeah.
Especially being a young adult, if you think about it, being a young adult today is so different than it was 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 30 years ago. It's it's a complicated time in the developmental life cycle. You add having a mental illness or having an addiction issue or an eating disorder on top of that, and it makes it even more complicated and challenging. And what we ask when young adults come to treatment is is a lot. It's no small feat. I love to think about this concept of change, right? And we think about
Mhm.
change is what is change? And when you actually think about what change entails, change in and of itself is hard. And even small little changes are hard. I remember being it was definitely the first week of social work school. And one of our professors said to us at the beginning of class, who in this class wears a watch? And, about 70% of us raised our hands. And she said, I want you to take off your watch from the wrist that it's on, and I want you to put it on the other hand. So we did. And the second that I did that, I felt uncomfortable. Like my watch does not belong on my right wrist, it belongs on my left
Why am
wrist.
I doing this?
Why am I doing this? Let me take it off my right wrist and put it back on my left wrist where it belongs. this is a small ask in theory, right? Just changing the hand that your watch is on. And it is a change and it felt uncomfortable. Even this small thing felt uncomfortable. If you think about like our basic routines, like when you shower, the way you brush your teeth, like we all sort of have our routines and the way that we do things. You change one little thing in that routine and it feels uncomfortable. We are asking young adults to make pretty substantial changes in the way that they are living their lives, right? And not only are we asking them to make these changes, we're asking them to sustain these changes. They can't just switch the watch to the other wrist again, right? We want them to make changes that they are sustaining. And I truly believe that in order for change or in order for recovery to be sticky, there has to be like a sense of community. There has to be like this strong social support behind it, um, because it is so hard and they can't feel like they are alone and the only ones in this process. Also, we have to make the process fun. Like there has to be joy and laughter and fun and humor in this experience of recovery, of treatment, of change in order for it to feel like manageable on a day-to-day basis. We're asking them to sit in group therapy, to do individual therapy, to participate in coaching, to participate in family work. This is really hard work. There has to be some like relief throughout the day too, where they can sit around with a bunch of their peers, play some board games, listen to music, hang out and have fun. So the community really provides that extra scaffolding to help hold these young people up in this process of change, which can feel like a roller coaster at times.
Yeah, and I just I got back from Chicago. We were at a conference and had the guys from Menninger and McLean and somebody from Rogers and everybody. We were talking about psychodynamics, and one of the things that really kind of stuck out to me, as technical as we can get about all that stuff, is that you know when you work with community as a medium by which treatment and care and change and healing takes place, there's this co-regulation thing that happens.
Hmm.
Like, even if I'm the person who's having a bad day today, I've got three, five, 10 other people that I'm connected to who are having better days than I'm having.
Sure.
And I borrow
Hmm.
their ability to regulate and handle the day.
Yes.
And of course, part of what you're talking about in your training is something you see the power of therapeutic alliance. It's like gaining this even more than any methodology
Hmm.
is this therapeutic alliance. And some of that therapeutic alliance also lives in community. When you get a young adult that's coming in for the first time and they've got all the stuff that comes up for a person, maybe they've come from treatment or whatever, and they've had a lot of kind of, big T therapy. um, what does it look like? What do you as a person seeing this person emerging into your community? Like, what is the practice that you engage in, welcoming them in and getting them to interface in a way that's going to help this change occur? Like, what's that process look like?
Yeah. And I think community comes into that process as well. Um, I think it's very rare to see a 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old walk into a treatment facility and say that they're excited to start treatment, they're ready to do the
Right.
work, they're glad to be here. You don't
I'm
sometimes you
stoked
see
about
it.
being in treatment today. Right.
Right. Well, I mean, every so often you see it, but more often than not, young people are entering treatment and they're saying, I don't want to be here. My parents are making me be here, school's making me be here, um, using a lot of other language to describe their feelings about starting about
Colorful
starting
language that we don't allow on the radio. Right.
correct
Exactly.
about starting treatment. And that's normal. And I think we have to really normalize that, not only for in young people who are entering treatment, but also for their families. I think this idea that you know, somebody has to be motivated or want treatment or be ready for treatment to work. Like I don't necessarily think that that's the case, right? Like the symptoms of their illness are making it so that they can't feel that motivation, that readiness. And that's our job, right? When they enter treatment and they're not excited to be there and it's everybody else's fault but theirs, it's our job to really try to engage them in this process. And oftentimes that work, ironically, also gets done a lot by the community. I can say so many things to a young person who's about to start this process. And my words likely mean very little on that first day. They don't know me. We don't have a relationship. I am some adult in their life or some other adult in their life trying to,
They're barely
engage
oriented
them.
in the first place, right?
Exactly. However, when we give them their peer mentor, their buddy who sits down with them, or they're part of the orientation group where they're meeting a bunch of their cohort and other peers in the community who have been here who say, listen, we didn't want to be here either, like at all. And this was what our day one looked like. But we promise you, like, just hang in there. It gets better. This place isn't so bad. The treatment actually works. You're going to feel better. Those words coming from their peers do mean something to them. And I think what's so powerful in a therapeutic milieu is to have people that are at different stages in the process, because for the people who have been in the milieu longer, they are farther along in their recovery process. They've accomplished many of their treatment goals. They have an opportunity to do service, to be a mentor to somebody who's coming in, which is really great for them and their sense of self-esteem and efficacy and identity. It's something to be really proud of. And for the newer folks to have somebody that's farther along to serve as a role, to be that role model, to be that inspiration, to not just be some other adult that's saying something, but to be somebody who's walking the walk, who's in their shoes saying, listen, you got this, it's going to be okay, is really powerful for them as well. So I always say to families and to young adults that really the first week or month of treatment is really about engagement, orientation, engagement, assessment. Like the work will get done after that, but you have to like really spend the time and the diligence that's necessary around that engagement phase, which involves not just the treatment team, but the whole community wrapping arms around the new person that's walking in the door.
Yeah, the kind of be here now
Yeah.
moment is what you're trying to get to. And people are, we all get weirded out and we don't know what's happening. And if we get to a place and we feel disoriented, we don't know what's happening, theoretically we can comfort that by having some version of the future that we feel like is reliable. Like I can, it's not right now, but I can hope. And it's like you give them all these people who've already lived some version of the future. And it's like, yeah, it's going to be okay, actually. Just hang tight and just be with us. And I think that that's the gateway, right? That people have to walk through. And ultimately, it's not just the gateway, it's also the goal. Like being comfortable in discomfort,
Yep.
being able to like connect and make connections so that you can move forward and everything else. And that the question I have about that is, you've created a program that revolves around some of these principles and bringing a person in, but the end goal, the outcome is to be them arriving in the world in some way that allows them to navigate those things on their own and replicate that in some new place if that's where they're going. What's the picture that you try and paint for them as they start to kind of come into their own bodies and know what they're doing? What
Right.
kind of picture are you helping them paint for the future that you think is viable? Like, what
Mhm.
is the program trying to do with regard to that?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think that if I could sum it up in one sentence or two sentences, that we want to help young people to establish lives for themselves outside of treatment that feel meaningful and purposeful and aligned with their authentic self, right?
Mhm.
So, what that looks like for one young person might be very different than what it looks like for another, and um, each individual is unique and For some, it might be that it is going back to a college campus and being able um, to be on a college campus in a manner that's congruent with wellness, right? For others,
Right.
it might be that college isn't their thing. That's not sort of aligned with what's meaningful, purposeful, and authentic for them. It might be finding gainful employment, but I think that and the range of what, vocational areas of interest are also varies. I think a lot of young people um, they graduate from high school and they feel a lot of pressure once they enter college to sort of know what to major in, know what they want to be when they grow up or when they
You're
graduate.
grown up now. Figure it out.
Right.
Right.
Figure it all out. You should know what your career is going to be. And a lot of that is dictated by who their community was growing up, right? And in some communities, everybody goes off to either be like in banking or lawyers or doctors. In other communities, it might look different. But they haven't even had a chance to step back and think about, wait, what do I want? Like, what actually feels
Right.
good for me, not for my parents, not for everybody that I went to high school with, but for me. And I think that when we look at treatment as a whole, many clients are coming to us experiencing some pretty acute symptoms of their mental health diagnoses. And step one is, of course, we want to provide symptom relief, right? The symptoms are what are making them feel really bad. The symptoms are what are interfering with their ability to experience meaning and purpose in their lives. So first we want to address the symptoms and we want symptom relief. Once we have symptom relief, that's just part one. Part two
Yeah.
is, okay, now what? Now what do we want to do with this life and with the skills that we built? Because now we can actually have a life. Um, and I think too often treatment stops right after step one and doesn't address step two. And step two really needs to be addressed. So a lot of times what we'll see is what's so great about having a therapeutic milieu is it's almost like this little laboratory, right? So
Right.
all of the patterns that tend to happen like socially, interpersonally, emotionally, and in life outside of treatment tend to manifest themselves within the milieu, which is good. We want that because that's when we can
And I
actually
like
do
this
work.
microcosm kind of way, right?
Totally. Um, and that's where we can do the work. We can say, hey, wait, it's happening. Remember how you told us about how in all of your friendships this tends to happen? It looks like it's starting to happen here too.
And
So what
and
can
here you are again.
right.
Right.
So how do we do it different? What skills can we use? And if we can create these corrective emotional experiences within the therapeutic milieu, then we have the opportunity to say, okay, now let's start thinking about doing some stuff outside of treatment. Do you want to take a class? Do you want to get a part-time job? Do you want to volunteer? Do you want to do an internship? Let's do some of that stuff so that you can practice all of these skills that you're learning here in the outside world while you still have us like kind of running alongside you. Um, and that's, I think, where the magic happens because then they start experiencing success outside of treatment, which then enables us to, over time, say, you got this. You've been working, you've been taking classes, like you're doing it and you're doing it in a way that feels, again, meaningful, purposeful, authentic, all of those things, skillful.
Yeah. And I think that it's the thing that parents run into a lot. You kids, and this doesn't happen for all kids. I've got one in each category. I got one kid that's off at college, one kid that's living at home while doing his first year in college. But even then, they go off, and everything that they're doing is somewhere else.
Right.
And as a parent, you hope what you've done is said enough to them and given them enough tools and so that when they do run into something that they can't navigate, that they trust you, they come to you, And you're like, well, look, just apply these things and make sure this goes well. But for kids that may not have that relationship, or they're struggling with mental illness, or they don't know where to turn, they end up in this kind of black hole. Like they don't feel connected, they don't know what to do, they don't know where to turn for solutions, they don't have anybody they're willing to reach out to, they feel ashamed. There's all those pieces. This thing about treatment community that you got going on, of course, is the immediate feedback piece. That's
Mm.
like, I see that this happened, or I see that this pattern is emerging, or that you're having these feelings. We notice this with you right now. And we want to know if you notice and what you plan to do differently about it so that you can create a mechanism for how that's going to exist later on. And that's got incredible power. What's your favorite I know you've had every program. I mean, everybody has various levels of challenge, but there's always the one who comes in that looks hopeless. Like they've got no skills and they feel like they got no grounding, and then they pass through the program and they come out the other side with this kind of incredible. Like, what's one of your favorite stories, success stories?
Goodness. Oh, that's such a hard question.
They're all great. I know they're all great, but you end up having your favorites without over identifying somebody, of course.
Yeah. I mean, there's a handful that stick out to me. I'm trying to pick between these two, but maybe I'll do both. Um,
Do
so,
both.
um, in addition to the community aspect of the model, we also have really tried to sort of reconceptualize what coaching can look like in
Hmm.
um, within a clinical program. So when clients come to us, they get both a therapist and a coach. But I think what's unique is that both people are licensed clinicians. So I might be the coach for one client, but be a therapist for a different client. So you play like sort of all the roles. And the reason that we decided that all of our coaches had to be licensed clinicians is because we discovered very early on that the coaching really needs to be very clinically informed, because it's oftentimes during the coaching that some of your most sort of profound and impactful clinical opportunities present themselves. And maybe that's because um, during coaching, it defenses are just down a bit. Coaching typically happens outside of a therapeutic office, right? More like in the community. Like coaching can happen in Central Park on a basketball court. It can happen walking around, handing out resumes. It can happen, um, it's more community based, right?
Right.
So
And
oftentimes,
movement oriented, right?
yeah. So I think that there's just more opportunities and coaches can get, pretty creative. So we had one client, this is a while back, that we worked with who, came to us with some pretty profound, complex trauma. And therapy was extraordinarily difficult for her. To the point that she wasn't really able to talk, to participate. She was very, very shut down in a therapy session or in any therapy session. The second that she walked into a therapy room, she would sit in groups and definitely would be like engaged. You could tell that she was listening, but active participation was not sort of something that she was able to do in the beginning stages. So that's sort of where the coaching came in. She had one activity, one hobby that she absolutely was passionate about. She loved, loved, loved rock climbing. Um, and that was something that she would actually talk about, right? Like there wasn't much that she would want to engage in conversation about, but if you asked questions about rock climbing, she would communicate, talk about it, seem animated about it. So we had the idea that for coaching, why not go to like a rock climbing gym? It's hard in New York City. We're not just like scaling mountains in Central Park, right? But
No,
there's
there's something. You go outside the city, you can find
but
some good
outside the
climbs.
city there is, yes.
Right?
But there's great rock climbing gyms. Like there's a couple of really good ones, and she knew all of them. So we thought let's like actually do some like coaching. Let's take her there and do that. It's her happy place. Let's see like how she presents. Lo and behold, you know, when coaching would happen within that sort of environmental context, she started talking more and about non-rock climbing topics as well. And a relationship actually started to form in a way that probably would have taken, I don't even know, maybe a year if it was just like conventional therapy. And then, of course, as we know, once you have that relationship, then work can actually start to get done. And slowly but surely, we were able to start doing some more of like the conventional trauma work. But I think that what people don't realize, and we do a lot of research too, and when we look at trauma and sort of the data that we collect around trauma, um, you know, actually doing like certain physical activity can help with symptoms of
Oh yeah.
trauma. And um when you see improvements due to like physical interventions to help with trauma, then that is positively correlated with interpersonal symptoms that are a result of trauma, like impulsivity, that's a result of symptoms of trauma. So, like, they're all sort of correlated with one another when you look at the subscales of trauma. So, doing that physical work is impactful. But, relationship was formed, trauma work started happening that then enabled her to open up, especially in the groups that were run by the person who she had been doing the coaching with, which then allowed her to open up in other groups that some of her peers were in. And it just becomes a snowball effect. But it started with rock climbing.
Right.
That's where it started. Um, so, like you said, we all go to school, and it's very important to learn DBT and to learn EMDR and to learn CPT and to learn all of these different types of interventions. But at the end of the day, without the relationship, none of the interventions are going to work anyway. So, we have to get creative in terms of how we are doing the engagement, how we are doing the relationship building and think outside of the box. So that was a big one. And then, of course, we have, as I'm sure many people can relate to that work in the field, the clients that literally won't get out of the car, like
Right.
won't get out of the car.
I'm not going anywhere.
I'm not getting out of this car. And you're spending like 6 hours trying to get them out of the car. I'm not coming. I'm not going to talk to anybody. Not going to make friends with anybody. I'm not going to do treatment. And then it's those ones that, months in, you're like, okay,
Blossom
we're
and
actually
flourish,
getting
right?
ready to like discharge. I'm not ready to discharge yet. And those ones always make me, smile as well.
Well, I like this rock climbing. I'm an old rock climber from long ago. And the thing I used to say about rock climbing is that it will, it just won't, it doesn't lie to you. You know
No.
exactly where you stand. Which way's up and which way's down, and there's also the centering. Like you keep your body centered so you can make a move, or you can go, climb to a location that you picked out or what have you. And I've always talked about that from a, experiential standpoint. Like the therapeutic value of that metaphor is really,
Yeah.
it sounds like she kind of got it on her own too. Like
Yeah.
she was able to process things while she was in this kind of the happy place,
Mhm.
but she started applying the rules of what, rock climbing is to her expression in therapeutic work.
Right.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Are you in, I mean, I know that there's experiential aspects to the program. Like, that's one example. Like, how do you intentionally engage some of the experiential stuff into the program?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's where we have to really understand that our clients are our best teachers. They tell
Right.
us what they need in terms, and it changes as cohorts change too, right? But um, having movement as part of again, when we look at the model, if community is a core pillar, if individual therapy, if coaching, if, psychiatry, movement, right, and nutrition are also core pillars. Having a yoga instructor, having a personal trainer, having somebody who does mixed martial arts and, you know, uh, mindful walks. We have a cohort of client who this past summer were really into pickleball and, going out doing that, but integrating in, the experiential, the movement, is key to wellness.
Hmm. That bilateral hemispheric coordination thing, right?
Mhm.
The brain
Yeah,
having to get both sides of itself working and talking to one another really helps for the emotional regulation in the end, ultimately, is what it
right.
boils down to.
And again, it's like, sometimes it was on those walks to or from pickleball where like really important conversations, like group therapy, like happens during those time
Right,
periods.
right. You can't recreate it in a room in the end. Like it's hard to recreate that kind of thing in a room.
Mhm.
I in working with folks that are going, I mean, I think that transitional programming, we look at treatment and the flow of treatment. Somebody has a crisis, maybe they end up in the hospital.
Mhm.
And then maybe they go to residential care, right? It's pretty intensive. I refer to residential care as often as not as a pressure cooker. Like it's really designed to get in there and do a lot of kind of core work and things like that. And each of these can be a very important step, but the rubber meets the road in programs like the door. The
Yes.
rubber meets the road where a person actually starts to be in the world and engage with others who are also being in the world and
Mhm.
find community and find connection and find it in a way that causes them to sustain it elsewhere, to sustain it in what is ultimately to become an independent life, right? Um, in all of your training, and you spent time in residential programming, what made you focus and become, a founder and help start up a program that was aimed at this transitional component? What was the thing that brought you there?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple different things. When you look at, generally speaking, outcomes and outcome data for both mental health and substance use treatment, quite frankly, it's unacceptable, right? Like,
Right, right. It's really, you're right. It is.
can you imagine? Like, I remember like one time, um, I was thinking about it. I hate going to the dentist. Like, I'm really bad about the dentist. It's not my thing. Um, can you imagine if when I went to the dentist right before he started or she started a procedure, um, they said to me, there's like a 35% chance that this will work, but only like a 35% chance that this
We're
procedure will
really
work.
kind of not sure, actually, but here we go, right?
I would say you must be, I'm not going to do this then. Why would I do this? Like you have to tell me that this is going
Hmm.
to work. It's And I don't think that we hold ourselves as a field, generally speaking, for a variety of reasons, which would be a whole different podcast.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
I, I think, we need to try to do better and to be better. And too often in mental health treatment, you see this revolving door. So often we get clients at the dorm that are coming to us and it's their second, their third leave from school. And it's like, ugh, like that can't feel good. It's not good for this young person
Right.
to have to experience failure over and over and over. It's not
Well,
good.
and they start to think that that's what's true about the world. They're just a failure all the time.
Right.
Like they start to identify with it,
Yeah,
right? You know?
totally. So, I think one of the reasons why we see so much recidivism in mental health and substance use treatment is because there's not adequate sort of transitional programming and transitional care. A lot of times people
100%.
are feeling, they're having a crisis, as you said, they're having some very acute symptoms. They go into a hospital or a primary facility, and then in some cases, like 5 days later in a hospital, they're out, or if it's primary, maybe they're in like a 30-day program and they leave and just sort of do like a conventional IOP. And that that jump, it's just too big of a jump, right?
Yeah,
Um, we want to
100%.
get treatment right, and we want to get it right the first time so that it doesn't have to happen again. And that's where transitional treatment that is phased, that is titrated over time, that includes a reintegration component while treatment is still happening, is really important. The other thing I think that is really important is that there's a variety of options available out there for young people. For some young people, doing transitional treatment in a more rural setting in the mountains or in the woods is what speaks to them. And that's great if that's what speaks to you. For other young people, doing that is not congruent with who they are, and being able to do really comprehensive, um, clinically sophisticated transitional treatment in an urban environment where they could see themselves like living long term
Yeah.
is also a huge area of need. And I think that there, somewhere along the line, some like myth got created that in order to get comprehensive, sophisticated, intensive treatment, you have to like be in the middle of nowhere. And I don't think that's true for
Right.
everybody.
It's the
And for
fool on
some,
the
it's
hill myth,
harmful.
right?
Right.
Right.
And for some members of our community, quite frankly, it's not an option because it's not like safe for them to be in those spaces. So, yeah.
Well, I think the dorm, the program that you're running there and programs that are like it, I in my world, I know that there's a number of them to choose from, but when I say there's a number of them, I'm like, what, 10, 15, maybe?
Mhm.
You know, as far as the rest of the treatment world is concerned, that's where the big gap in this care model is,
Yeah.
right? And insurance is partly to blame
Yes.
because they won't pay for housing, and as soon as you separate the clinical from the residents, then you got to pay for housing, they'll pay for the other, right? And I was talking to what Dr. Ellenhorn, not too Ross Ellenhorn recently, and
Mhm.
and coming out of the mental health model, he's like, we were closer in the 70s to
Mhm.
what this model should actually look like than we are today, because managed care came in the
Right.
90s
Right.
and gave us treatment periods and separated things and tried to do a kind of an economic management model, a medical model, and overlay it on behavioral health. And it's like, well, you can't treat mental illness the same way. you
Right.
just you just can't. So the question I'll ask you, that I ask almost every guest, is what do you think is going to make the turn? Like, when, as a community and as a society here in the US or elsewhere, when do you think that we're going to recognize the model doesn't quite work and that we got some gaps to fill,
Yeah.
and we're gonna move, our outcomes are terrible, and what are we gonna do about that? What do you think is gonna make the turn?
Yeah. I actually think that there's a a pretty good awareness within the mental health field that this is the case. I think the question is, how do we um, advocate for more macro level change so that we as mental
Hmm.
health providers can actually do the work that we know works,
Okay. Yeah.
um, and do it for everybody so that everybody has access to this. And if 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 I think about what will need to happen for that to happen, I think there's a couple of things. Um, every program should be doing research and collecting data, like data, right? Because there's no arguing with reliable, and valid data and research. Second, I think that like-minded folks working in the mental health field and programs need to come together and share data. and work,
Metadata, right?
yeah, and really like work together, form alliances with one another so that we can together as a field and as leaders within the field really work to disrupt the status quo, to advocate, um, and I'm talking like more like, policy change, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
go
Mm-hmm.
to the Capitol, do advocacy work, um, because at the end of the day, really what's standing in the way of access to the right type of treatment and us being able to provide the right type of treatment, you kind of named it, is insurance companies, right? Um,
Right.
and government can do things to mandate that their policies change so that mental health care, physical health care, um, is guided by sound principles of care
Right.
and,
That were created by clinicians who do treatment, right?
right, and not grounded in, profits that insurance companies make. So I do think that, um, a lot of us go to school, myself included. I went to school to become a clinician, right? To do the therapeutic work on more of a micro level. And as I've grown in my career, that will always be my passion. I love doing that work. And in order to help more people, I think we all have to carve out time to do that macro level advocacy work as
Yeah.
well.
Well, making statements like that and putting it out on the air, I'm with you on that tack that we got to gather together to help make some change. And part of this podcast is designed to educate people so that we can start doing those things. But Dr. Falk, thank you so much for being on the show today. I'll come down there to DC and be with you when we go, march down the Capitol to say,
We'll
hey,
do it. Yes.
mental health is important. But this has been Dr. Amanda Falk with The Dorm. Amanda, thank you so much for joining me today. Head Inside Mental Health with Todd Weatherly on WPVM 1037, the voice of Asheville. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
I feel so lonely and lost in here. I need to find my way home. I feel so lonely and lost in here. I need to find my way home. I feel so lonely and lost in here. I need to find my way home. Find my way home.